Hey guys, and welcome back to Caelesti. In today's video, I'm going to be going through all of the changes that are in update 47. The full changelog is listed on Modrinth, where you can already find the pack. But before you go and download that, please do stick around and allow me to randomly discuss like every single tiny little thought process behind every change in this update, because ad revenue, yeah. So the first change in update 47 is actually to the varied lily pads. You will remember from the previous update we have different sizes, different rotations, different colored variations as well, and I received this recommendation to increase the contrast on the edge of the lily pads. So thank you very much for that recommendation. That was actually spot on. You were absolutely right. Next up, we have some changes to the mushrooms, and really I could probably just throw up the video that I've already made on the mushrooms because the entire changelog is just in that video. But yeah, in update 46, I introduced a new model for the brown mushrooms where they would occasionally spawn with extra mushrooms on the side of whichever block they were placed on. I think these look really good. I really love this novel concept, and I only wish it could be more complicated with things like logs. Like, imagine like a tree, a vertical tree with mushrooms on the side of it. I mean, you could do that with biome-based CTM and changing the render type with polytone, but what if I build a house in that biome with a log? It's going to have mushrooms on it, so I don't want that, you know? So I wish we could do it in a different way. Maybe in the future, who knows? But for now, this is the best I'm going to get in terms of extra brown mushrooms on the side of things, which just don't they look really good. I really like that. Mushrooms are one of the first things I made in this version of Caelesti. There's been a few like iterations of Caelesti over the years. So they had a kind of an outdated texture compared to how I'm doing things now. The way that these mushrooms look now is, in my opinion, more similar to the way that these lily pads are textured in terms of how much contrast they have and how bright and vivid and saturated the palette actually is. So things are starting to look a little bit more consistent across the board, which is always a win. Always good to go back and fix up some of those older features for sure. As for the red mushrooms have now got their own unique trait in that there's just a lot of them. That's kind of the whole thing. There's just a lot of red mushrooms. Every time a red mushroom is placed down, there are one of 6 smaller red mushrooms that can surround that one. Well, we've got a triple one here. That one's pretty good. It's very, very rare that you'll ever get more than like 2 or 3 mushrooms. 2 or 3 of these smaller mushrooms around like the main central one. But yeah, it can happen. You can have all 6 of the small mushrooms spawn if you're just really unlucky, because I feel like that would actually look really bad. It's really dense, to be honest. But yeah, there are a ton of variants of red mushroom now. I did a State Surveyor special at the end of the mushroom video. I really like the State Surveyor. I hope you guys are enjoying that little bit. I think it's really fun. But yeah, there's a ton of variants of red mushrooms. It's insane. There's a lot. I mean, it's completely unnecessary. You'd never, lay out all of those mushrooms and see all of the individual variants and appreciate them. But the point that I'm trying to get across with this is just how random and dynamic you can make just a single block. You got to think about how mushrooms look in vanilla. They are so simple. It's just you place it down, that's what you get. Maybe it has a little bit of variance on how, shifted it is around the block, a little bit further to the left, a little bit further to the right. But this is on another level, right? Like, you will never be able to place down a mushroom and see the same one twice. You probably can. Some of them are more common than others just because of the way that the weights work. But the whole point is that if you see a field of these red mushrooms, like you often do on Mushroom Islands, then they're just going to look so random, and I love that. That's the main goal of Caelesti. Have a huge field of the same thing placed down a ton of times, and yet they all look completely different, completely unique, very dynamic. I love it. This is the entire goal of Caelesti, like personified in a single block. I love it. Next up, we have changes to the flower stem color map. This is not actually a change to any of the flowers that you see here themselves, but just the color map that dictates the coloring of the stem beneath the tulips. I actually had someone recently tell me that tulips shouldn't be so droopy like this. They should just have like straight up stems, which probably would look better, actually. I don't know. I mean, I would consider remaking these. I can kind of just make one model, and it works for all 4 colors of tulip. I say 4 because I actually do want to change the cornflower at some point in the future. Back in the day when I was lazy and, well, nothing's really changed, has it really? But never mind. So what I basically did was take the cornflower and say, you know what? I like blue tulips. So let's just have blue tulips in addition to the red, orange, white, and pink ones that you have in vanilla. So I renamed these using language files to be blue tulips, even though they're still cornflowers and still look like cornflowers in the inventory. But this was kind of a lazy cop-out, really. So I actually am tempted now to change these back to an actual cornflower. Mostly because I found a really interesting way of doing the model that I would like to replicate at some point in the future. I'll throw an image up on screen now of the inspiration I have saved for that. But yeah, at some point in the future, I'll probably be in the mood to do flowers again, and I'll just do a bunch of flowers. So that'll be a bit of fun. I was talking about the color map though, so let's go back to that. A number of people complained in the previous video that the color map for the flower stems was just too similar to that of grass. It just blended in. It didn't really look like there was any difference between the flower stem and the grass beneath it. So the ideal way of fixing that was just simply to shift the color map of the flower stems ever so slightly, just so it's a little bit mismatched with the grass. Not as distinctly mismatched as vanilla is, because I do think that looks a bit crap personally, but definitely not the same as it was in update 46. So flower stems do actually now stand out compared to grass. They're just a little bit brighter, a little bit more white, and I think that looks really good. I think it really suits the look of the flowers. This applies to red, orange, white, pink, and blue tulips, and also allium as well. And then dandelions and poppies have their own unique color maps. So dandelions are leaning a little bit more towards yellow. I like the idea of them being a bit more green, a bit more like limey, I guess, mostly because of the idea that dandelions are considered to be weeds in most situations. So them being more in the direction of like a yellowy green kind of fits with their, I don't know, like accidentally unpleasant vibe. How do I describe that? I hope you guys understand what I'm going for here. It's like a color theory thing, right? Like these are bright and like lush and they look really nice, but these are more like yellowed, so they're just like that means that they're bad in some way, but it also just fits the aesthetic of a dandelion because they also don't look particularly appealing. They're all in like random directions and they're yellow, which I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of the color yellow personally, but they look good, right? It's a dandelion and it doesn't blend in with grass anymore, so hooray. Poppies are also a very similar story as well, but in a different direction. So these ones are just darker, obviously. Which is to match up with the vanilla poppy, which also has quite a dark stem as well. But again, I like the way that this one looks in particular because it doesn't blend into the grass anymore, but it does sort of stand out against it in a different way to how the tulips and the allium now do. So yeah, poppies are a little bit more unique again, which I do really like. I really love this model. I think this is one of the best models I've made in Caelesti. The changes to this, the way that the stems and flowers actually match up now on each individual flower, chef's kiss. Love it. This is a great feature. I love this one so much. Next up, I want to talk about an experimental feature which is being introduced at some point in the future. In update 47, I've included these bizarre sword models which make your swords much larger than they otherwise would be. They're much better viewed on armor stands, as you can see here. I haven't fully finalized the item textures when they're displayed in an item frame. I'm thinking they're probably just going to use the thumbnail system, but I'll explain that now, I guess. So each of these swords are actually using a 32 by 32 texture, but the actual item model has been scaled up by a factor of 2, which means that it still has the exact same pixel consistency, but can be a lot larger. And this is actually a technique which Mojang themselves used very recently when it came to the spears. I posted about this on Blue Sky, oddly enough. I wanted to try and give Blue Sky a go, but I don't know. I don't use it myself, so who really cares? But yeah, I gave this a go just a couple of days before Mojang announced that they were going to be adding the spears to the game, and I think it's quite interesting that they had a very similar, yet slightly different approach to how to do larger item models with a sort of thumbnail system in the GUI. So the way that I've chosen to go about it here, as you can see, is there's actually a unique texture for the sword, which is just cut off. So you only get to see the pommel handle, crossguard, and very base of the blade. However, with my system, there is a bit of a difference. When you pick the item up, you reveal the entire sword texture, which I think looks really good. I personally really like this. Mojang's spears that they added recently do retain their preview thumbnail even when you pick the item up, and that is also consistent across things like item frames as well. So anytime you view a spear in an inventory, you're just getting the thumbnail of the spear's head and not the spear shaft. But with mine, it's kind of the opposite. You get the bottom side of the sword as opposed to just the blade, which I think would look kind of dumb if it was just the blade, really. But yeah, so this is now applied to all swords. So gold sword also looks like this as well. You get this sort of twirling cutlass crossguard thing. Zombie piglins and piglins as well. They look really kind of intimidating with these big swords now, so I do definitely like that change. I will say though, obviously with this being an experimental feature and the item frames being unfinished, this is definitely subject to change, so if you guys have any opinions on any of the sword textures here, please do let me know in the comments, and there is a very good chance that they will get added in a future update. But yeah, I haven't done netherite. Once again, I refuse to touch netherite until I get around to that big complex idea that I keep bringing up. But yeah, so I will be doing all of the weapons and the items at some point in the near future. I released a video a little while back showing my plans for visual enchantments for spears, and I'm also planning on doing something very similar for swords as well. So at some point in the future, we might have like a first visual enchanting update, which has the spears and the swords. And I also now have a spin-off pack in the works called Caelesti Armor. It's not the first spin-off of Caelesti. There are a couple of other ones as well. Glass has been given Caelesti Fenestra, which is pretty sweet. It's just the glass from Caelesti isolated in a single pack. I've also got Caelesti Flora, which adds all of the flowers and things like lily pads and sugarcane as well. Caelesti Armor will be the third installment in that series, where it changes, the tools and the weapons to have my fancy Caelestified tools and weapons. So yeah. I'm not really sure how best to go about doing visual enchantments for swords just yet. There are a certain number of things that I might change. With the cutlass, it's going to make visual enchantments a bit more difficult because I have to kind of adopt them to this curved sword style. I'm not entirely sold on this anyway. Subtle curves aren't very easy to do in pixel art, right? So I might just give up on this and make it a saber instead. So it has like the same fancy crossguard, but just a straight edge instead. But yeah, it's looking pretty good. I'm getting much closer to doing the visual enchanting update. It's coming, I swear. It's finally coming. It will happen. It's just give me a little bit more time. While I'm on the subject of preparations being made for the visual enchanting update, let's talk a little bit about the bow and arrow and then also the trident in just a moment. First of all, though, the bow and arrow. I've actually not really made any changes to the bow and arrow themselves, but more specifically the arrow entity model. This is something I've known about for quite some time now, the ability to actually change the entity model for the arrow. I'm not sure if Optifine ever implemented this or if this is an ETF or EMF, I should say, exclusive feature. Why are EMF and ETF and also ESF, not just one mod? Wouldn't that make so much more sense? Damn, never mind. Anyway, so yeah, the arrow entity model is it's the item. It's just the item model, right? But extrapolated as a 3D model. I think it looks really good. The way this works is actually surprisingly simple. If you look at the arrow's entity model here, you can see that what it's actually made up of is just a bunch of lines, essentially, like 1 by 1 by X cubes to make up the entire arrow entity model. The texture looks so weird. I love it. I probably could have used Perface UV for this and made life much easier for myself, but when do I ever do that, So whatever, we have a custom entity model and texture, which looks kind of whack, but I really like it. I think the effect in game looks really good. In my mind, this solution to the fired arrow, loose arrow, shot arrow, in my opinion, this approach to the the arrow entity model is actually even more Minecrafty than Minecraft itself. I don't know what it is. Like, if you look at the vanilla arrow, what is that? Doesn't that look really bad? I don't know. Like, now that I've tried this approach to having the arrow entity model look just identical to the arrow item texture, I don't think I could ever do this a different way. Like, even if I made a different pack in the future, this is the way. Like, doesn't this just look fucking awesome for the arrow? Like, I can't complain. It feels so right to have done it that way. And it feels so right, in fact, that I've actually now updated the Trident to use the same thing. That's not why I updated the Trident. I think this is a really cool system. But you'll see here my Trident is not using the wacky, cube-based model from vanilla. It's using what looks like an imitation of an actual item texture. Very similar, again, to the spears and my oversized swords that are being introduced in this update. This effect is further complemented by the fact that, again, the thrown Trident actually uses a proper fake item model texture. I think it looks so good. This is made up of so many individual elements. I'll throw a screenshot up now of how this looks in Blockbench. I think it looks quite funny. It's just a bunch of lines, essentially. And again, the item texture just looks so whack, but it works. I could have used Perface UV. I'm sure people are going to be annoyed about this in the comments. Like, I could have definitely used Perface UV for exactly this. But it works. I don't care, it's fine. Now, to be fair, if it's going to be really easy to update this to Perface UV, I might just update it in the future. And then I can probably just reference the item texture instead of the custom entity model texture. And then it's just technically saving on space, I guess. It's probably only a couple of megabytes, but it's worth it, right? For optimization. Yeah, I reckon so. But I really like this thrown Trident. I think it looks pretty good. Next up, I want to talk a little bit about the glass panes. In the last update, I introduced an entirely new system for glass and stained glass, where you will be able to see the rear face of glass blocks. I'm calling this backface glass, but a lot of people are misreading that, so maybe I'm not going to call it backface glass anymore. Maybe I should just call it rear face glass. but that sounds dumb. Backface makes so much sense to me. Inverted cube glass? I don't know. give me a new name idea in the comments, and I'll start referring to it as that if I like the suggestion. But if you're misreading backface glass, that's on you. It says backface. It doesn't say what you think it says. It says backface. A couple of weeks ago when I released the glass pane devlog video, I followed it up with a little poll on the posts tab of my channel, asking you guys whether or not we should actually go ahead with the backface system for the glass panes. There are some minor issues with how the glass panes render, but really they're so rare and so edge case that I'm not really bothered by it. But I still wanted to put the question to you guys. Should panes use a backface system or not? However, I've actually been able to do best of both worlds. Backface glass panes will not actually be enabled by default. You'll have to install the mod ResPackOpts if you want to see them for yourself. And the reasoning for that is because 55% of 8,000 people decided that the backface panes looked pretty bad. So by default, they won't actually be enabled. However, you can see here on the resource pack subscreen that Caelesti now has this like options button to the right, which has completely ruined the text to the left of it here, but never mind. Maybe I'll adjust that to actually fit the ResPackOpts button in the future. I should have definitely done that. Never mind, I'll do it in update 48. But yeah, if you go onto this little subscreen here, you can see that Caelesti now has a number of options. Celestial variance and spider model complexity I'll go into a little bit later on in the video. If you've watched the recent Suggesti, you'll already know about these. But first of all, we're going to talk about the glass pane backface rendering. And you can see that there's a little custom tooltip, renders the rear face of glass panes. Now, by default, this will actually not be enabled. You can see the default option here is disabled, and that is because of the outcome of the poll. 55% of people would rather not have backface panes, so by default, they will be disabled. However, if you install ResPackOpts, you can go onto this submenu, enable them, and they will work. I'm going to just disable them real quick, and we'll see it reload and see how they look in game. That took a surprisingly long time to reload. I do not know why. But here you go. This is how the glass panes will look by default when you first get Caelesti update 47. So to the 45% of you that wanted to have backface glass panes, you will now need to install ResPackOpts. You can just simply add it to your Fabulously Optimized instance or include it in your mods folder if you're doing all this by hand. If you're doing this all by hand, like, why? Just get Modrinth or CurseForge, right? Like, they both work. Me personally, I actually quite like the backface glass panes now. I was kind of weary of using them when I first developed them because of the issues that arose, but those issues are so rare, so edge case, that I really see no reason not to use this feature now, because most of the time, it looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with the outcome of this. I've set up some different configurations over here. You can already see what's going on. Whenever you have like a junction segment of glass panes, or a cross segment especially, you kind of get some weird like rendering issues. I think it's to do with the order at which the faces are being rendered. I don't really know. I mean, when you look at this from certain angles like that, you see it's fine. There's no issue. But then as soon as you go to like more of a 45-degree angle, it starts to get a bit buggy, which is really unfortunate. There's not really much I can do about that. But if you do have any ideas, then again, do let me know and I'll give it a try. But if you're building glass panes or windows in just a typical configuration, so just like flat like this, or maybe even corners if you want to go especially fancy, then you're not going to have any issues. So as long as you're not building in like strange configurations like this, you're really not going to have any problems with the backface glass panes. And I never build like this, so I don't see any reason why I shouldn't use them. In fact, in a natural setting, this is the temple structure that you find in Plains villages, you only ever find glass panes as like a 1x1 like this anyway, right? So, it doesn't matter if it's just a regular house with clear glass or this special fancy structure with the stained glass panes. You're never going to see this sort of a structure naturally form on like a villager building. It's not going to happen. So I can kind of argue that the game is just made in a way where you're never going to encounter this issue naturally. If you ever actually encounter this specific visual bug, it's because you built something that way, not because the game generated something that way, right? So if you're going to use backface glass panes, just don't build these and you'll be fine. Getting close to the end of the video now, I've got a few simple changes before I go into the more exciting things about entities and, the sun and moon as well, which has been a huge point of contention in a recent video, but I'll talk more about that in a sec. This change with mushrooms is very simple. I've just removed the texture for the mushrooms on top of them, so they don't have any mushrooms now, which does look a little bit dumb if you shear them, because they just sort of transform into cows. Just out of nowhere, but whatever. Obviously, because I've recently remade the mushroom models, I switched out the models to be the mushrooms that we have over here, but then the colors were mismatched because, of course, that's the vanilla brown mushroom palette and that's the vanilla red mushroom palette. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to leave it for now. I'm just going to remove them so at least there isn't that like weird mismatch. So now we just have weirdly naked-looking mushrooms in the pack. I'll do cows eventually. Last but not least, we have farmland. This was a really simple change that got brought up in Caelesti. Whilst I was making all the complex dirt in update 46, I completely forgot that the underside of farmland was referencing the top texture of dirt. And of course now, with dirt having its like fancy color map, you know, the top texture of dirt is grayscale, so that wasn't particularly good. That wasn't even what was happening. Because the texture had been moved, this was actually just the, you know, purple and black checkerboard to say it's missing. So at least it's not missing anymore. This is just a temporary stand-in texture where I've taken the grayscale dirt top and added the brown color to it within its own texture. It's not color mapped. It's just like a fake version of the color mapped dirt, which isn't perfect. You can see here when farmland has moisture, it doesn't really work. But it's still just better than a missing texture reference, right? So at some point in the future, when I come back and finish off dirt, you know, farmland, coarse dirt, rooted dirt, I will give farmland the treatment it deserves. I will give it a proper set of textures. But for now, I'd rather just make sure there's a simple texture in place here rather than a missing texture reference. As much as I like this format of laying out the changes in a big line and talking about the development process, it doesn't really do justice for certain parts of the project. So I wanted to start dedicating an end segment of these videos to larger scale changes that really benefit from a montage of clips outside of my test world here. So without further ado, let me show you some of the more exciting changes in update 47. I talked a bit before about configuring your glass panes, but allow me to show you the main reason why I introduced ResPackOpts supports for Caelesti. In version 0.23, I introduced a high definition sun texture, which I thought looked really good. For this update, I wanted to create an equally realistic moon, but unfortunately the moon just wasn't quite hitting the same as the large-scale sun texture. I actually still quite like this moon. It could definitely use some additional detail, showing off the lit rims of the craters on the dark side of the moon maybe, and perhaps a square or cube would be more fitting, but the main complaint I received was that the HD texture simply didn't match up with the rest of the game. For that reason, I've created this 32 by 32 moon texture, still considerably more detailed than the vanilla equivalent, but more in line with the rest of the pack. You can, however, toggle between these two options using ResPackOpts, switching out from the vanilla-style moon to the realistic counterpart. I plan on expanding this toggle in the future so that you guys have a lot more fine control over the moon, but for now, you'll be able to pick between a stylized 32-bit sun and moon and these absolute monsters which kinda follow pixel consistency rules, even if they do look a little weird in Minecraft. Now it's time for the entities. I've been getting back into CEM with this update, and with my newfound knowledge, I was able to achieve something that I wanted to add quite some time ago, but simply didn't know how to. Caelesti already has custom bees, but now their wings flap considerably faster than in update 46. My goal here was to have a comically fast wing flap for an absurdly disproportionate animal, kind of like the Gronkle from How to Train Your Dragon. I think the new wing speed is looking good, and for whatever reason it just looks a lot more logical to me. Like these wings must be putting in work to keep that body off the ground. Caelesti's bees are a fair bit smaller than the vanilla bees, but I still feel like they're much too large for this pitiful flap to be achieving any sort of lift. Welcome back to Minecraft Resource Pack channel, where I point out how 60cm long bees that flap their perfectly two-dimensional and hollow wings break the laws of physics. You're welcome. The next mob I've been tinkering with is the Creeper, which has received a considerable upgrade since update 46. On top of a whole set of new animations, including a unique walk and run cycle, Creepers have gotten even better at camouflaging, spawning with colors and textures that make them just a bit harder to spot in their given environment. I really like this change. It's just a tiny bit evil, but some of their disguises really don't work too well and can actually make them stand out more. So I'd say it's somewhat balanced. Let me know if you get jumped by a camo creeper. I think that'd be pretty funny actually. Spiders are looking very different in this update, the last of the 4 OG monsters to receive some sort of upgrade. If you suffer with arachnophobia, then fear not, ResPackOpts gives you the option to disable these spider models, simply reverting them back to their vanilla version. The spider was the first mob I worked on for this update, and so it was a sort of trial run. I've already got plans to upgrade the spider at some point in the future, so when I get around to that, I'll likely make a dedicated arachnophobia-friendly version, which you'll be able to enable through ResPackOpts. For now though, just being able to revert back to the vanilla model will mean that the pack isn't completely unplayable for those of you who really cannot stand the sight of these guys. Since I posted update 46, a staggering 22 people have supported my coffee and got themselves zombified for Caelesti. There's quite a few to go through here, so I'm going to list them off quickly. We have Oppie, Robot Rofel, Steampunk Toad, Quartzman, Jaw Redstone Guy, Cyvax, Homer the Chicken, Nolimo, Cubic Grain, Kashino, Eat Your Salad, O Gaming SCV, Yite, Teorian, Cheesehead, Rainy People, Chance, K Selkie, Divinia, Miku, Open Blocky, and finally Wiz. I've also been pronouncing some of your names wrong in the past, so specifically to Hade, I do apologize. I called you Hady in the last video. You aren't Hady, you're just Hade. I do apologize. It's great fun zombifying your skins, and it's awesome to see ever-increasing variety amongst the zombies, so thank you, and I hope you look forward to encountering you in Caelesti Update 47. Getting your skin zombified is easily the best way to support me, and you'll end up becoming a permanent part of Caelesti, so if you're interested, you can find the link to my coffee shop in the description. I'd like to give a huge thanks to everyone who's donated on Coffee so far, and a special thanks to my top supporters, Mag, Guns and Chips, and Super Martin. I'd like to also thank my first ever monthly supporters, Teorian and Oppie. You guys are all keeping Caelesti going, so thank you. That's all for today's update showcase, guys. I hope you enjoyed the devlogs of this update cycle, and I hope you're looking forward to seeing the updated and brand new features in your game. Remember, we're still running 121.8 with Polytone 354 Alpha, so you'll need to make sure that's included in your fabulously optimized instance. And once again, if you want to configure the features showed in today's devlog, you'll need to download ResPackOpts too. Before I go, I wanted to give you a quick update on my plans for the new year. I've been keeping to a schedule of roughly one video a week for a good number of months now. This is the first time since 2020 that I've been able to dedicate all of my available time to working on YouTube, and it's been quite the experience. Making content for you guys is really fulfilling, and even if I don't respond, I try my best to read through as many comments as I can. And I hope that's reflected in the suggested videos and the ongoing changes throughout Caelesti. Truth be told, Minecraft resource pack development is a hobby I thought I was pretty much done with. When that glass video took off earlier this year, it really took me by surprise. I made that video on a whim, and I never expected it and the dirt color map video to help me go from just 1.5k to now 22,000 subscribers in less than 6 months. It's truly mind-blowing. All of that said, as I've been working so heavily on resource pack development in the last couple of months, I have been neglecting some other projects I've wanted to work on. So starting in January, I'm going to relieve myself of the expectation of one video per week and trial a number of new approaches to video creation. I'm really craving some variety, so I might start working on another Spore video, or try out a new style of devlog with less frequent uploads that go into a lot more detail. I also want to give streaming a go in 2026, and I might test smaller and more frequent updates with fewer or even just a single devlog in between. I've also got a super secret idea for a brand new video series starting at the end of January that I think you guys should really enjoy, so stay tuned for that. That's all for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the update showcase. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, join the Discord if you want to stay more up to date, and I'll see you soon for some more Caelesti content. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care, and bye-bye.